What would you do if survival demanded a price worse than death? She didn't come to Seoul to chase dreams. She came to run from hunger, from debt, from the slow collapse of a family she couldn't save from across an ocean. But one night, a single decision pulled her into a world where power is inherited through blood, where love is a weakness, and where a child not yet born is already marked for death. Gunfire, betrayal, a dying king desperate to leave a legacy, a woman forced to choose between her body and her life. This is not a love story. This is not a fairy tale. This is the story of how an invisible woman became the center of a criminal empire, and how every step she took toward survival dragged her closer to war. Watch closely, because once this story begins, there is no escape. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe now, and step into the darkness. Fire. Rain hammered the asphalt like gunfire long before the gunfire actually came. Christiana Ngoi's lungs burned as she ran, shoes slipping on wet pavement, breath tearing out of her throat in sharp, panicked bursts. Seoul's neon lights blurred into streaks of red and blue as bullets cracked through the night behind her. Sharp, metallic sounds that echoed off alley walls. "Don't stop," Lee Tae-hoon shouted. She turned just in time to see him stumble. Blood bloomed across his white shirt, spreading fast, almost black in the rain. He caught himself against a brick wall, teeth clenched, one hand gripping his side. His other hand shoved a pistol into Christiana's trembling palm. "Run," he said again, quieter now, firmer. Her hands shook violently. "You're bleeding." "There's no time." A car screeched at the end of the street. Headlights flared. Shadows moved, too many of them. Lee Tae-hoon met her eyes, and for the first time since she'd known him, fear flickered there. Not for himself, for her. "For the child," he said. "You have to live." Another shot rang out. Lee Tae-hoon shoved her backward, his body turning toward the gunfire as he raised his weapon. Christiana screamed his name, and the screen cut to black. Silence. Then a voice, calm and haunting, sliced through the darkness. How does a girl who came to Seoul just to survive end up carrying the future of a criminal empire? 6 months earlier, Christiana Ngoi scrubbed someone else's floor on her knees. The apartment smelled like bleach and old money. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished marble tiles. Thin, tired, eyes shadowed by exhaustion and fear. She wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her hand and kept scrubbing. The phone in her pocket vibrated. She already knew who it was. She stood, wiped her hands on her apron, and stepped into the bathroom to answer. "Hello, Mama." The line crackled with distance and pain. "My daughter," her mother said softly. The doctor came again. Christiana's heart sank. "What did he say?" Silence. Then, "He wants payment before the next treatment." Christiana closed her eyes. In the background, she could hear her younger siblings. Thin voices arguing over food, over crumbs. "How much?" Christiana asked, though she already knew it would be more than she had. Her mother hesitated. The same. That same number echoed in Christiana's head long after the call ended. She stared at her reflection again, at the foreign face she'd become in this city. Someone invisible, replaceable, disposable. She'd come to Seoul chasing opportunity. A student visa that turned into expired paperwork. Promises of work that dissolved into cleaning shifts and under-the-table wages. Every job interview ended the same way. Polite smiles, thinly veiled discomfort, rejection. "You don't fit our profile." She fit no profile here. Not Korean enough. Not wealthy enough. Not protected enough. That was how she met the black-tide credit syndicate. They didn't look like monsters at first. Just men in suits, smiles too practiced, voices too calm. They offered her help when no one else would. Money sent home within hours. No collateral. No paperwork. Just trust. She learned too late that Black Tide didn't collect money. They collected fear. First it was calls. Calm reminders. Then messages. Photos of her family's house in Nigeria. Her mother's clinic. Her siblings walking home from school. The voice messages came next. "You're late, Christiana. We don't like being patient." The final warning arrived one night as she left work. A black van idled across the street. A man stepped out, held up his phone, and showed her a live video feed. Her mother, sitting in a chair, crying. "You have 2 weeks," the man said gently, "or we start collecting from them instead." Christiana vomited in the alley behind her apartment that night, while burning her throat as the walls closed in around her. She had nowhere left to run. That was when the call came. The number was unlisted. The voice was cold, efficient. "You have been shortlisted for a private caregiving position." Christiana laughed bitterly. "You have the wrong number." "No," the voice replied. "We don't." An address followed. A time. A warning. "Do not be late. Do not ask questions." She almost didn't go, but Black Tide called again that night. So she went. The compound didn't look real. High walls rose from the ground like something ancient and impenetrable. Iron gates sliding open silently as her taxi pulled forward. Armed guards scanned her before waving her through. Christiana's pulse hammered in her ears. The driver didn't wait. Inside, the air felt heavier, quieter. Every footstep echoed too loudly. The floors gleamed. The staff moved like ghosts, eyes down, mouths sealed shut. She was led into a room that smelled faintly of medicine and incense. And that was where she saw him. Kang Dae-suk lay propped against silk pillows, his body thin beneath an expensive robe. Tubes ran from his arms. Machines hummed softly at his side. He looked small, until he opened his eyes. They were sharp, cold, still dangerous. Christiana felt it instantly, the weight of him, the presence of a man who had destroyed lives without lifting his voice. "You're late," Kang Dae-suk said. I'm sorry," Christiana stammered, bowing awkwardly. "The taxi." He lifted a finger. She froze. "You are Nigerian," he said, studying her like an object. "Alone. No family here." Her throat tightened. "Yes, sir." "You have debt." Her stomach dropped. He nodded slowly. "Good. Desperation makes people honest." She swallowed hard. "Sir, I was told this was a caregiving position." "It is." He gestured to the machines, to his own frail body. "I am dying." The words hung in the air. "You will assist with my care," Kang Dae-suk continued. "Medication, feeding, company." "Company?" "The pay," he said calmly, "is 3,000,001 per month." Christiana's breath caught. That was more than she'd ever earned. "You will live here," he added. "No visitors. No phone calls without permission. You will not discuss what you see or hear." Her heart pounded violently. "And if I refuse?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Kang Dae-suk smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Then Black Tide will collect." The room seemed to tilt. Christiana realized, in that moment, that this interview was never an offer. It was a transfer. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Do you accept?" Her mind screamed no. Her body shook. Her soul recoiled. But all she saw was her mother's face on that screen. Her siblings' empty bowls. "Yes," she said. Kang Dae-suk reclined back against his pillows. "Good," he said softly. "You begin tonight." As Christiana followed the silent staff out of the room, dread curled tightly around her spine. She didn't know it yet, but she had just stepped into a war that would decide the fate of an empire, and she would not be allowed to leave unchanged. The doors closed behind Christiana with a sound that felt final. Not loud, not dramatic, just a slow, heavy seal that echoed through the corridor like a verdict. She stood still for a moment, fingers curled into her palms, forcing herself to breathe. The air inside the compound smelled different, sterile, controlled, expensive. Nothing here belonged to chance. A woman in a gray uniform approached without smiling. "Follow me." Christiana obeyed. Her room was small compared to the rest of the compound, but it was still larger than any place she'd lived since arriving in Seoul. A narrow bed, a desk, a single window that didn't open, cameras in the corner, unhidden, unapologetic. You will remain available at all hours, the woman said flatly. Mistakes are discouraged. Christiana nodded. Yes, she wanted to ask questions. About training, about rules, about how to keep from killing a dying man by accident. She asked nothing. That night, she almost did kill him. Kang Dae-suk lay half-conscious as she prepared his medication, her hands trembling as she double-checked the dosage. She had watched the nurse earlier. She was sure of it. Almost sure. When she injected the 4, his breathing changed. Subtle at first, then shallow. The machine beside him beeped sharply. Christiana froze. Oh God! Her voice cracked as she rushed to his side, fumbling with the tubing. Sir? Sir? Can you hear me? The door burst open. Staff flooded in. Voices overlapped in sharp Korean. What did she do? Check the dosage. Christiana was shoved aside so hard she nearly fell. A senior nurse yanked the 4 free barking orders. Someone slapped Christiana across the face. Not hard but precise. Stupid girl, the woman hissed. Do you want to die? Tears burned Christiana's eyes, but she didn't cry. She stood there shaking as they stabilized Kang Dae-suk, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it might give her away. When the room finally cleared, she expected to be dragged out, punished, fired, handed back to black tide. Instead, Kang Dae-suk spoke. Leave us. The staff hesitated. I said leave. The room emptied. Christiana stood alone beside his bed, hands clasped, head bowed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I followed what I saw. You followed fear, Kang Dae-suk said quietly. She looked up, startled. His eyes were open, studying her. No anger, no shouting. Fear makes the hands shake, he continued. It makes you rush. He motioned weakly toward the tray. Come. She approached slowly. Sit, he said. She sat. He reached for her wrist, not roughly, but firm enough that she felt the strength still coiled beneath his frail body. He guided her fingers, positioning them carefully. This is how you check, he said. Again. She swallowed and repeated the steps, slower this time. Good, he said. You will learn. She blinked. You're not angry? I am dying, Kang Dae-suk replied. Anger wastes time. That was the moment Christiana realized something deeply unsettling. This man was not cruel for pleasure. He was cruel because time had taught him cruelty worked. The days blurred into nights. Christiana learned under pressure, never allowed to relax, never permitted to forget where she was. The staff corrected her sharply, sometimes cruelly. They spoke about her in front of her as if she were deaf. She's foreign. She smells like fear. She won't last. They tested her constantly, changed routines without warning, watched to see if she'd panic, if she'd break. But Kang Dae-suk watched too. Late at night, when the compound quieted and even the guards seemed to breathe softer, he asked her questions. Why Seoul? He asked once. She hesitated. Opportunity. He smiled faintly. Lies are easier when they sound noble. She exhaled shakily. Because Nigeria had no room for me to fail. He nodded. Failure follows us everywhere. Only power keeps it quiet. Another night he asked, Do you know how many men I buried to sit here? She shook her head. Neither do I, he said calmly. After a while the faces blur. Betrayal becomes routine. She flinched. Does it haunt you? He looked at the ceiling. No. What haunts me is that none of them mattered. Those conversations frightened her more than his reputation ever had. Because she saw it then, beneath the violence, beneath the legend. Desperation. The family noticed her before she noticed them. Seo Yura was the first. Christiana felt her presence before she heard her voice. A cold pressure in the room, like air being sucked away. Seo Yura entered one afternoon dressed immaculately, eyes sharp, expression unreadable. She looked Christiana up and down slowly. So this is the new one, Seo Yura said. Christiana bowed deeply. Ma'am. Seo Yura circled her like an appraiser inspecting flawed merchandise. Foreign. Young. Her lips curved slightly. Temporary. She turned to the staff. Keep her close. Christiana felt her skin crawl. The daughters came soon after. Kang Hae-rin didn't bother with subtlety. She blocked Christiana's path in the corridor one evening, arms crossed, eyes burning. You think cleaning his mouth makes you important? Hae-rin sneered. You are nothing here. I know my place, Christiana said quietly. Hae-rin laughed. Good. Remember it. Kang Soo-jin was worse. She smiled. She asked questions. She offered tea. Do you miss home? Soo-jin asked sweetly one morning, watching Christiana stir soup. Yes, Christiana replied carefully. Soo-jin nodded. Homesickness makes people careless. Christiana felt the warning beneath the kindness. Kang Min-seo didn't speak much. She shoved. Once, as Christiana passed, Min-seo slammed her shoulder into her hard enough to send her into the wall. Watch where you're going, Min-seo snapped. Christiana said nothing. She learned quickly that silence was armor. The tests escalated. Food left out deliberately. Medications mislabeled. Instructions contradicted. One night, Christiana found a dead bird on her pillow. No note, no explanation, just a message. She didn't sleep after that. Then Kang Dae-suk collapsed. It happened during dinner. His hand trembled violently, chopsticks clattering against porcelain. His breath hitched, shallow and sharp. The room froze. Christiana was at his side instantly. Sir. He tried to speak. He couldn't. His body convulsed. Chaos erupted. Doctors rushed in. Staff shouted. Seo Yura stood frozen, eyes calculating even as her husband convulsed. Christiana was pushed aside again. This time she was sure she wouldn't be allowed back. Hours later, attorney Han Ji-won arrived. The family gathered in a private room. Christiana stood at the back, unnoticed, heart pounding. Han Ji-won spoke calmly. The diagnosis is confirmed, she said. Terminal pancreatic cancer. Seo Yura's nails dug into her palm. How long? Hae-rin demanded. 7 months, Han replied. Possibly less. Silence swallowed the room. The succession law, Han continued, requires a male blood heir. The daughters stiffened. You know what this means, Seo Yura said coldly. Han nodded. Without one, the Baekryong syndicate fractures. Hae-rin stood abruptly. This is absurd. We are his blood. You are not sons, Han replied. Min-seo slammed her fist into the table. Then change the law. Kang Dae-suk's voice cut through the chaos. You cannot change blood. Everyone froze. His gaze drifted slowly across his wife, his daughters, and stopped on Christiana. The room followed his eyes. She felt every breath stop. Kang Dae-suk studied her for a long moment. Then he spoke. Leave us. Christiana's heart dropped into her stomach. The silence after Kang Dae-suk's words was so heavy it felt physical, like pressure in Christiana's ears. The room was dim, lit only by a single standing lamp that cast long shadows across the private study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves loomed like witnesses. Rain tapped softly against the tall windows, the sound sharp in the stillness. Christiana stood frozen in front of the desk, her hands clenched so tightly, her nails cut into her palms. Dae-suk did not repeat himself. He simply watched her. Have my child, he said again, calmly this time, his voice thin but unwavering. A son. The words landed like a gunshot. Christiana shook her head immediately, breath coming too fast. No, that's insane. You can't just. You understand why, he interrupted, not unkindly. You've already heard the law. She laughed, a sharp, broken sound. You want to use me as a loophole. I want to save what I built, he replied. And what will die without me? Her legs gave out. She grabbed the back of a chair to keep from collapsing. You have daughters, she whispered. 3 of them. Dae-suk's eyes darkened. And none of them can inherit. You've seen what that truth has turned them into. That's not my fault, Christiana snapped, anger flaring through the fear. Your system, your world, did this. Yes, he said. And now I'm trying to outsmart it. She backed away, shaking. I'm your nurse. Your employee. You are a woman with no protection. He countered quietly. No family here. No safety net. A woman who already belongs to my world, whether you like it or not. The cruelty of the truth hit harder than any threat. I won't be touched, she said, tears finally spilling. I won't be owned. Dae-suk leaned back slowly, pain flickering across his face as he adjusted himself in the chair. This is not ownership. It is a transaction. A transaction? Her voice cracked. You're asking for my body, my future, and I am offering you a life, he replied. One you will never have outside these walls. She turned away, pressing her hands against her temples, fighting the rising panic. Images flooded her mind. Her mother's frail voice on the phone, the hospital bills back home, the threatening messages from Black Tide Credit Syndicate, the bruised man she'd once seen dragged screaming into a van. You will be protected, Dae-suk continued. Your family in Nigeria will never go hungry again. You will disappear after the birth. New name, new country. No one will ever find you. And the child? She asked quietly. He stays, Dae-suk said. As my heir. She spun back toward him. So you get everything. And you survive, he replied. The silence returned, heavier now. Christiana slid down into the chair opposite him, covering her face as sobs tore out of her chest. Shame burned through her, mixing with rage, terror, and a deep, sick helplessness. This isn't consent, she whispered. This is a gun to my head. Dae-suk did not deny it. Survival rarely feels noble. She lifted her head slowly, eyes red, jaw trembling. No, she said. No. But I'm saying yes anyway. The words tasted like blood. Dae-suk closed his eyes for a moment, exhaling as if he had been holding his breath for weeks. When he opened them again, there was no triumph, only exhaustion. Then we proceed carefully, he said. And quietly. The door behind her opened without warning. Christiana flinched. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped inside, his movements precise, his expression unreadable. His hair was neatly parted, glasses reflecting the low light. Attorney Han Ji-won, Dae-suk said. You may begin. Han inclined his head politely toward Christiana, as if they were meeting at a corporate boardroom instead of the edge of her life. We will discuss terms, Han said evenly. Everything will be documented, binding, and enforceable across multiple jurisdictions. Christiana stared at him, numb. This is really happening. Han opened a leather folder and placed it on the desk. Trust funds will be established immediately. One for your personal use. One for your family abroad. Accounts in Switzerland and Singapore. Untouchable by syndicates. And if I die? Christiana asked suddenly. Han paused, then nodded. There are contingencies. Dae-suk's voice cut in. No one touches her. Han met his gaze. There is also an emergency clause. If harm comes to her under this contract, any harm, assets are frozen, power shifts, and names are released. Christiana swallowed. Names? Everyone, Han said simply. That got her attention. Protection will be constant, Han continued. A single handler. No rotation. No leaks. The door opened again. This time, the man who entered carried violence in the way he moved. Controlled, contained, dangerous. He wore a dark coat, rainwater still clinging to the fabric. A thin scar ran along his jaw. Lee Tae-hoon. He stopped a few steps inside, eyes flicking briefly to Christiana before returning to Dae-suk. I'll handle it, Tae-hoon said. Christiana felt a chill. She remembered the blood on the pavement from the future she hadn't lived yet. He is not your guard, Dae-suk said. He is your shadow. Tae-hoon's gaze met hers fully now. There was no warmth in it, but there was something else, recognition. As if he understood exactly what it meant to be trapped. You don't leave her side, Dae-suk continued. Ever. Yes, sir. The meeting ended as abruptly as it began. Christiana was escorted back to her quarters that night, her mind floating somewhere outside her body. She showered for nearly an hour, scrubbing her skin until it burned, as if she could wash away the decision she'd just made. Weeks passed. The house changed. Security doubled. Staff whispered. Yura's gaze sharpened, her eyes following Christiana like knives. Heir openly mocked her. Sujin watched from corners with calculating interest, and Minseo's hostility turned physical, shoulder checks, broken dishes, deliberate intimidation. Taehoon was always there, silent, watchful. One morning, Christiana woke nauseous. By afternoon, she was trembling. The doctor arrived at night, escorted by armed guards. The test was placed gently on the table between them. Positive. The room spun. Dae-suk received the news without visible reaction. Only his hand tightened slightly on the armrest. "The clock starts now," he said. Christiana pressed a hand to her stomach, fear and grief warring inside her. Somewhere in the house, the daughters sensed it. And far beyond the compound walls, enemies began to move. Because the future of an empire had just taken root inside a woman who never wanted it, and survival once again would demand a price far greater than consent. The room was silent in a way that felt hostile. Not peaceful. Not calm. Predatory. Christiana stood where Kang Dae-suk had positioned her. Half a step behind his wheelchair, hands folded, head lowered. The weight of the compound pressed in from every direction. Marble floors, private guards, framed photographs of bloodlines that ruled cities from the shadows. Kang Dae-suk cleared his throat. The sound echoed. "I will not waste words," he said evenly. "The syndicate needs certainty. It needs continuity. And it needs it now." Yura sat perfectly still at the far end of the table. Her posture was elegant, controlled. Her face showed no emotion at all. That was the most dangerous thing in the room. Kang Hae-rin leaned forward, already vibrating with fury. Sujin's eyes narrowed, calculating angles, probabilities. Minaseo tapped her fingers against the table, jaw tight, barely containing violence. Kang Dae-suk continued. "I have named an heir." The words detonated. Hae-rin shot to her feet. "You what?" Minaseo laughed sharply. "This is a joke." Sujin didn't speak, but her gaze locked onto Christiana for the first time. Slowly, deliberately, like a sniper aligning a scope. Yura finally moved. She lifted her teacup, took a measured sip, didn't blink. Kang Dae-suk turned his head just enough. "My son," he said. "When he is born." The room exploded. "No!" Hae-rin slammed her palms on the table. "You're insane. She's nobody." Minaseo kicked her chair back. "You bring a foreigner into our house and expect us to bow?" Sujin stood calmly. "Father, this decision destabilizes everything." Christiana's ears rang. Her stomach twisted violently, not from pregnancy, but from terror. Every gaze in the room burned into her skin. She could feel the hatred, the calculation, the intent. Yura finally set her cup down. The sound was soft, final. "This house," she said quietly, "has rules." Kang Dae-suk met her eyes without flinching. "And I am the rule." That was when the first death threat came. Not shouted, not dramatic. A whispered message slipped through the earpiece of a security guard. The guard stiffened. Lee Tae-hoon moved instantly, stepping closer to Christiana, hand already on his weapon. Kang Dae-suk saw it. His voice dropped. "Begin lockdown." The daughters stared at Christiana like wolves who had just been told the prey was protected. For now, the war had begun. The first attempt came 2 days later. The soup smelled normal, rich, warm, comforting. Christiana lifted the spoon, hands trembling. Lee Tae-hoon's voice cut sharply. "Stop!" She froze. He took the bowl, sniffed once, then slammed it to the floor. The ceramic shattered. Steam hissed. "Poison," he said. Christiana stared at the mess, heart hammering. "Who?" "Everyone," he replied flatly. The second attempt came that night. The elevator doors slid shut, then stopped. The lights flickered. Christiana's breath caught. The car jolted, then dropped an inch, jerking violently before emergency brakes screamed to life. Lee Tae-hoon forced the doors open manually, sweat streaking his face. The cables were cut, he said. The third attempt came 3 days later. A red dot appeared on the glass. Lee Tae-hoon tackled Christiana to the floor just as the window exploded behind them. The bullet missed her by inches. By the end of the week, Christiana no longer slept. She sat awake in the dark, one hand over her stomach, whispering apologies to a child not yet born. "They want to kill you," she murmured, "and I don't know how to stop it." Lee Tae-hoon watched from the doorway. "They won't," he said. She looked up at him. "You keep saying that." He didn't respond, because they both knew the truth. The child was already marked. Kang Dae-suk was dying faster now. His skin turned gray. His hands shook. Blood appeared when he coughed. But his mind, sharper than ever. He summoned Christiana late one night. No guards. No witnesses. Just the two of them. "You're afraid," he said gently. She nodded. Every second. He studied her face. "Good. Fear keeps you alive." He reached out, placing a frail hand over her stomach. "When he is born," Kang said softly, "they will hunt him. They will never stop." Tears slid down Christiana's cheeks. "Then why do this?" Kang's eyes darkened. "Because power without legacy is just delayed extinction." He leaned back, breath shallow. "I am moving everything offshore. Trusts, shell companies, dead drops. By the time I'm gone, the syndicate will tear itself apart trying to find what no longer exists." She whispered, "And me? You will disappear." His voice cracked for the first time. "Tell him," Kang said, "that I loved him before he was born." Christiana broke. She knelt beside him, sobbing into the silk of his robe. "I never wanted this," she cried. "I know," Kang said. "That was why he chose her." The escape plan was simple. Too simple. Midnight. Rain. Unmarked convoy. Lee Tae-hoon would take her out through the old service tunnel beneath the compound. One Kang Dae-suk had used during his first war decades earlier. 30 minutes, Lee said. "That's all we need." Christiana nodded, clutching the coat around her body. They were 10 minutes in when everything went wrong. Gunfire erupted above them. The tunnel lights exploded into darkness. A voice crackled over the comms. Panic, betrayal bleeding through every word. They knew. Someone sold us out. Lee cursed, pulling Christiana behind him. Boots thundered. Shouts echoed. Bullets ripped through concrete. Lee fired back with ruthless precision, each shot calculated, controlled. They reached the vehicle. Lee shoved her inside. "Get down." She grabbed his arm. "You're coming with me." He looked at her. Really looked. Softened. "I'm not," he said. The explosion came first. Then the impact. Lee was thrown backward, blood blooming across his chest. Christiana screamed his name, crawling toward him. He grabbed her collar, dragging her close, with what little strength he had left. "Listen to me," he gasped. "You don't stop. You don't look back." Tears streamed down her face. "Please." He shoved her toward the car. "Go." She was screaming as the driver slammed the door shut. The vehicle lurched forward. Gunfire swallowed the tunnel. Then, a final explosion. Silence. Christiana woke up screaming. Rain lashed the windshield. The city lights of Seoul faded behind them. She pressed both hands to her stomach, sobbing uncontrollably. Everyone she had known was gone. Everything she had been was burned away. All that remained was the child, and a war that would follow him for the rest of his life. The screen fades to black. A single line appears. "To be continued." The silence lingers. Long enough to hurt. The world came back slowly. First, sound, distant, muffled, like waves crashing behind thick glass. Then light, pale and cold, pressing through closed eyelids. The smell of antiseptic replaced smoke and blood. She woke with a sharp inhale, fingers clawing at empty air. Her body jolted upright before the pain forced her back down. "Easy," A calm male voice said in accented English. You're safe. Safe. The word felt foreign, almost offensive. Her eyes opened. White ceiling. Soft beeping machines. Curtains drawn against gray London daylight. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. It was still flat. Still warm. Still alive. A sob tore out of her chest before she could stop it. She tried to sit up again, panic flooding her veins. Images crashed into her mind. Gunfire, screaming alarms, the smell of burning metal, the weight of a bleeding body pushing her forward, forcing her into safety. Where is he? She rasped. Where is the man with the scar? The voice hesitated. A suited man stepped into view, early 40s, immaculate posture, silver-framed glasses, face carved into something precise and careful. He carried a leather briefcase like a shield. You've been unconscious for 36 hours, he said gently. You were extracted successfully. Her eyes burned. That's not what I asked. Silence stretched. The machines kept beeping, indifferent. The man inhaled once, steadying himself. He did not make it. The room tilted. She felt it physically, like gravity had shifted, dragging her sideways into a void. No, she whispered. Her throat tightened, squeezing the word into something broken. He stayed behind, the man continued. He ensured the vehicle cleared the perimeter. The explosion. Stop, she choked. Her hands trembled violently as she pressed them to her face. The image replayed endlessly. His blood on her hands, his voice hoarse but steady, forcing her forward even as death closed in. Live. That was what he'd told her. Live for the child. A sound escaped her that didn't resemble a cry, raw, animal, ripped straight from her chest. She turned her face into the pillow, shoulders shaking as grief tore through her in waves. The man waited. He didn't rush her. He understood power. He understood loss. Minutes passed before she spoke again. And the old man? She asked quietly, not lifting her head. He died 6 hours after your extraction, the man said. Heart failure. Complications from his condition. Her lips curved into something bitter and hollow. Even death had been on his schedule. She finally looked up, eyes swollen, red-rimmed, but sharp. So, she said, it's done. He nodded. Yes. Her gaze flicked to the briefcase. You didn't come here just to tell me they're dead. No, he agreed. He opened the case. Documents filled it. Thick, stamped, layered with seals and signatures in multiple languages. The child, he said, choosing each word with surgical care, now legally controls 80% of the syndicate's global assets. Her breath hitched. What? The remaining 20% is frozen, he continued, distributed among shell entities to prevent immediate seizure. You are listed as guardian and executor until the child reaches maturity. She laughed softly, disbelieving. That's impossible. It is not. He slid one document forward. Emergency succession clause. Triggered upon the patriarch's death. The daughters were legally disqualified years ago. The wife holds no controlling stake. The room felt too small, too quiet. I'm untouchable? She asked. For now, he said. No direct action can be taken against you without destabilizing the entire structure. Any attempt on your life triggers financial collapse across multiple continents. Her hand drifted protectively to her stomach. And after birth? He met her gaze. After birth, he said, everything changes. London rain tapped gently against the window the night her contractions began. She had known it would happen. Like this, quiet, unannounced, while the world pretended nothing was wrong. Pain curled low in her abdomen, tight and insistent. She gripped the edge of the bed, breathing shallowly, refusing to scream. Not yet. Outside, unseen by her, violence erupted across oceans. In Seoul, gunfire shattered glass in a nightclub owned by a second-tier lieutenant. In Busan, a convoy burned. In Daegu, a man was dragged from his car and executed in traffic while commuters filmed in stunned silence. Power had a vacuum. and blood rushed to fill it. She screamed as another contraction hit, sharp enough to steal the air from her lungs. "Breathe," the midwife urged calmly. "You're doing well." She wasn't sure she believed that. Sweat soaked her hairline, her knuckles white as she clutched the sheets. Her mind fractured into pieces, one trapped in pain, another floating somewhere distant, watching flashes of memory like scenes from a film. A quiet compound, dead eyes in a frail body, a scarred man standing between her and death. Live. Another contraction slammed through her, longer this time. She cried out, tears streaking her face. Cut to Seoul. A boardroom drenched in blood. Men shouting over each other in Korean, Mandarin, English. Alliances collapsing. Old grudges resurfacing. A woman with pale skin and flawless composure sat at the head of a table, silent, eyes unreadable. No tears, no rage, just calculation. Back to London. She screamed again, the sound raw and feral as her body tore itself open to bring life into a world soaked in violence. "I can't," she sobbed. "I can't." "Yes, you can," the midwife said firmly. "You're almost there." Her hands shook as she pushed, every muscle burning, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Cut to Korea. A warehouse exploded in flames. A man fell to his knees, clutching his throat, poisoned. A sniper's bullet missed its target by inches, embedding itself in concrete. Back to London. One final, desperate push. Her scream shattered the quiet room. Then, a cry. High, sharp, alive. The sound cut through everything. Silence fell, heavy and sacred. The baby was placed on her chest, warm and trembling, tiny fingers curling instinctively against her skin. She stared, breathless. The world shrank to this single moment. His eyes fluttered open briefly, dark and unfocused. Her tears fell onto his face as she laughed softly, hysterically. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, my love." Outside, as if responding to some unspoken signal, the violence slowed. Men paused. Guns lowered. The city exhaled. For a moment, just one, the world went quiet. Days passed. She held him constantly, memorizing the weight of him, the sound of his breathing, the way his tiny chest rose and fell against hers. They told her his name. She repeated it softly when no one was listening. Felt heavy, old, dangerous. She walked the apartment at night, barefoot on cold floors, rocking him gently as rain painted silver lines down the windows. Sometimes she thought she heard footsteps. Sometimes she swore shadows moved where they shouldn't. Threats still existed. They always would. She stood by the window one night, city lights blurring through unshed tears, her son sleeping against her shoulder. "Who will you be?" she whispered. "Will they take you from me? Will they turn you into what they want?" Her reflection stared back at her. Older, harder, eyes no longer innocent. Her phone buzzed. Once, she froze. Unknown number. A single message appeared on the screen. The white dragon still bows to blood. Her grip tightened instantly, instinctively, as fear surged through her veins. She locked the door, checked the windows, checked the security panel. Then she sat on the bed, back against the wall, holding her son so tightly he stirred and whimpered. "I won't let them," she whispered fiercely, pressing her lips to his hair. "I won't." Outside, London slept peacefully. Across the world, men whispered names in dark rooms, and somewhere in the shadows, something ancient stirred, patient, waiting. The child slept on, unaware of the empire breathing beneath his tiny heartbeat. For now,